My daughter died 7 years ago or so, I believed. Every January, I sent her husband $40,000 money I earned running a small grocery store with aching hands and sleepless nights. I did it for my granddaughter, for my wife who died of grief believing our daughter was gone, and for the daughter I thought I had already buried. Then one quiet afternoon at the park, my 7-year-old granddaughter grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "Grandpa, please stop sending him money. Grandpa, come to the house and see." I did exactly what she said, and what I saw there nearly stopped my heart. Before we go any further, thank you for being here. If this story already caught your attention, take a second to tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It really helps this channel grow. Also, a gentle reminder, some elements have been altered for narrative and educational purposes. Any similarities are coincidental, but the truth behind the message is meant to help. I'm Stephen Harper, 68 years old, and for the past 7 years, I've been doing my best to hold what's left of my family together. That means every other Saturday I take my granddaughter Ivy, she's 7, to Riverside Park for ice cream. Chocolate chip for me, strawberry swirl for her. It's our routine, has been since her mother died. Willa was my daughter, my only child. 7 years ago, she died in a car accident on Route 9. Vehicle went off the road, caught fire. They said the body was too badly burned for an open casket. We cremated what was left. 6 months later, my wife Gloria died too. The doctors called it a heart attack, but I knew the truth. She died of a broken heart. Losing Willa killed her just as surely as that accident killed our daughter. So now it's just me, Ivy, and her father, Brad, my son-in-law. Brad's raising Ivy alone and I help out. $40,000 a year every January for the past 7 years. It's what Willa would have wanted. It's what family does. That September afternoon at the park seemed normal enough. Ivy sat beside me on our usual bench near the old oak tree, kicking her light-up sneakers and telling me about her spelling test. She'd gotten an A. I told her I was proud. She smiled that same smile Willa used to have, and for a moment, everything felt okay. Then she stopped smiling. Grandpa. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She glanced over her shoulder toward the playground, then leaned in close. "Please stop sending money." I blinked. "What?" "The money. To Daddy." Her little hand gripped my sleeve and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before: fear. "Please stop. There's something you need to see." My chest tightened. "Ivy, what are you talking about?" Just watch him, Grandpa. Watch Daddy. You'll see." She pulled away suddenly, hopping off the bench. "I have to go. He'll be mad if we're late." "Wait, Ivy, if something's wrong." "Please, Grandpa, just watch him." She wouldn't say another word. The drive to Brad's house was silent. Ivy stared out the window, clutching her backpack, like it was a life preserver. I wanted to ask more questions, but the look on her face told me not to push. "Not yet." Brad's house is a modest 2-story on Maple Street. White siding, black shutters, a lawn that's always a week past, needing a mow. I'd helped him with the down payment 4 years ago, another check I'd written without thinking twice. He was waiting on the front steps when we pulled up. "You're late," he said flatly. "Traffic," I lied. Ivy was already out of the car, head down, hurrying toward the door. Brad barely looked at her. "Go inside and start your homework." She didn't say goodbye to me, just disappeared into the house. I stood there on the sidewalk watching through the window as Ivy sat down at the dining room table. Brad walked right past her, phone pressed to his ear, not even glancing her way. Something twisted in my gut. "Patskati." I called out before he could close the door. "Is everything okay with Ivy?" He shrugged. "She's fine. Why wouldn't she be? She just seemed quiet. She's 7. Kids get moody." He paused, then added, "Hey, any chance you could send next year's payment early? Got some expenses coming up." Next year's payment. It was September. I wouldn't normally send the money until January. "What kind of expenses?" "House stuff. You know how it is." He wasn't looking at me. "Forget it. January's fine." The door closed. I got back in my car and sat there, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel. My mind was racing. "Watch him," Ivy had said. "There's something you need to see. $40,000 a year. $280,000 over 7 years. That was a lot of money for a man who barely said thank you, a man who couldn't even look his own daughter in the eye. I drove home as the sun set, painting the Pennsylvania sky orange and purple. The house was quiet when I got there. It's been quiet since Gloria died. Some nights I still reach for her in my sleep, forgetting for half a second that she's gone. Tonight I couldn't even think about sleep. I kept replaying every interaction I'd had with Brad over the past 7 years. The way he'd asked for money, but never sent updates about Ivy. Never invited me to dinner. Never called just to talk. He'd moved on fast after Willa died, started dating someone new within a year. I'd told myself everyone grieved differently, but what if I'd been wrong? What if there was something I'd missed? Willa's urn was sitting on my mantel downstairs. I'd kept it there for 7 years because I couldn't let go. Couldn't scatter her ashes like Gloria had wanted. It was all I had left of my daughter, or so I thought. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling. What did Ivy mean? What was I supposed to see? The night they told me Willa was dead, I didn't believe them. It was March 15th, 2017. 2 officers stood on my front porch at 3 in the morning, their faces carefully neutral in that way cops learn to do when they're about to destroy your world. Behind them, the street was empty and cold. I remember thinking it was too quiet for news like that. "There's been an accident on Route 9, the older one said. "Your daughter's vehicle went off the road." Vehicle, not car, not Willa's Honda. Vehicle. Like using a distant word could soften what came next. "She's at the hospital," I asked, already reaching for my coat. Gloria was behind me, gripping my arm. The officer shook his head. "Sir, I'm sorry. There was a fire. Your son-in-law identified her from dental records." That's when Gloria's knees buckled. The details came in pieces over the following days. Willa had been driving home late from a friend's house, Natalie Hughes, her best friend since college. The car had veered off Route 9 near mile marker 47, hit a tree, and caught fire. By the time emergency crews arrived, the vehicle was fully engulfed. They said she died on impact. They said she didn't suffer. I've never been sure if that was true or just something they tell families. The funeral was closed casket. Had to be. Brad stood beside me at the service, Ivy on his hip. She was barely 6 months old then. And I remember thinking how wrong it was that my daughter's baby would never remember her mother's face. Never hear her laugh. Never know how Willa used to sing off-key in the shower or how she cried during sappy commercials. They gave us an urn, simple brass about the size of a shoebox. It sat on our mantel for a week before Gloria could even look at it. "We should scatter her ashes at the lake," she said one morning, voice hollow. Remember how much she loved it there. We'd spent every summer at Lake Rayburn when Willa was growing up. She'd learned to swim there, caught her first fish, kissed her first boyfriend under the dock. Gloria was right, it was the perfect place. But then Gloria died. 6 months after we buried our daughter, my wife's heart gave out. Just stopped. The doctors called it cardiac arrest, but I knew better. You can die of a broken heart. I watched it happen. She got thinner, quieter, more distant every day, until one morning I woke up and she was gone. Found her in the kitchen, collapsed by the coffee maker, the same one Willa had bought us for Christmas 3 years earlier. After that, I couldn't bring myself to scatter the ashes. Couldn't let go of that urn. It felt like letting go of Willa all over again, and I'd already lost too much. So it stayed on the mantel. Still does. 7 years now. Harper Family Market kept me going. The store's been in my family for 35 years. My father started it back in 1989, and I took over when he retired. It's nothing fancy. Just a neighborhood grocery on the corner of 5th and Chestnut. The kind of place where people know your name and pay with crumpled bills from their jacket pockets. Mrs. Patterson buys her tea there every Tuesday. Old Joe Fletcher gets his lottery tickets every Friday. They all knew Willa. They all came to the funeral. After Gloria died, the store became my anchor. I'd open at 6 every morning, stock shelves ring up customers close at 8. The routine kept me sane, kept me from thinking too much about the empty house waiting for me at the end of each day, and I kept my promise to Willa. Before she died, she'd made me swear that if anything ever happened to her, I'd take care of Ivy, make sure she had everything she needed. So I did. $40,000 a year sent to Brad every January like clockwork. It wasn't about the money. It was about keeping my daughter's memory alive, about making sure Ivy had opportunities, stability, a future. Brad never said much about it. A quick thanks in a text message, maybe. No updates on how the money was being used. No invitations to see Ivy more than our every other Saturday ice cream trips. I told myself he was just private, that grief made people withdraw. But Ivy's words at the park kept circling back. "Please stop sending money. There's something you need to see." I stood in front of Willa's urn that night after driving home from Brad's house. Just stood there in my living room, staring at it in the dim light from the street lamp outside. 7 years I'd kept this thing. 7 years I'd honored it like it was sacred. What if something was wrong? What if Ivy knew something I didn't? I thought about the accident again. The details that never quite added up. How Willa had been driving on Route 9, a road she knew by heart, and somehow lost control on a clear night. How the fire had been so intense there was nothing left to identify. How Brad had been the one to confirm it was her. I'd never questioned it. Why would I? Brad was her husband. He loved her. And I was drowning in my own grief, trying to keep Gloria alive, trying to keep myself from falling apart. But now standing there in the quiet house with Ivy's frightened voice echoing in my head, I started to wonder, what had I missed? What was I still missing? For 7 years, I'd kept my promise. I'd sent the money. I'd trusted Brad. I'd believed the story they told me about the accident and the fire and the urn full of ashes. But now Ivy's words made me wonder, what was I really paying for? I saw the woman who would change everything on a Tuesday morning. The days after Ivy's warning at the park had been restless. I went through the motions, opening the store at 6 stocking shelves, helping customers, but my thoughts kept circling back to her words. Watch him. There's something you need to see. I tried. I drove past Brad's house twice, parked down the street like a nervous fool, and watched. Nothing seemed out of place. Just a man leaving for work, coming home, living his life. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe Ivy had been confused the way children sometimes are. That's what I told myself anyway. Tuesday mornings at Harper Family Market are predictable. Mrs. Patterson comes in around 7 for her tea. Old Joe Fletcher arrives at 8 for lottery tickets and gum. By 9, there's a brief rush of people grabbing coffee before work. I know their routines. They know mine. It's comfortable. The woman walked in at 9:15. I noticed her immediately because she wasn't a regular. Strangers happen, but something about her made me look twice. Mid-30s dark hair pulled into a ponytail, jeans, and an expensive-looking leather jacket. She moved with confidence like she knew exactly where she was going. She went straight to the coffee aisle. I stood behind the register sorting receipts, my hands stiff with arthritis. My knuckles ached, and I'd already dropped a roll of quarters that morning. Age had a way of slowing everything down. The woman placed a bag of ground coffee and a small jar of cinnamon on the counter. That all for you? I asked. Yes. Her voice was clipped. Not rude, just distant. She handed me a 20 without looking up. 8.47's your change. She took it and turned to leave. That should have been the end of it. But as she passed me, something tugged at my memory. The way she moved. The shape of her face. Something familiar I couldn't place. Ma'am, I called. She stopped and glanced back. Yes. Have we met before? Her expression didn't change. I don't think so. You just remind me of someone. I hear that a lot. She pushed through the door and left. I stood there staring after her, trying to remember who she reminded me of. The harder I tried, the further it slipped away. 20 minutes later, I stepped outside to bring in the sandwich board sign. That's when I saw her again. She stood across the street beside a silver sedan. And she wasn't alone. Brad was with her. They were talking. Brad leaned against the car, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. She said something, and he laughed. Then she touched his arm briefly and got into the driver's seat. Brad walked around and climbed into the passenger side. I stood frozen sandwich board forgotten in my hands, watching the car pull away down 5th Street. Questions raced through my mind. Who was she? Why was Brad meeting her here? Why hadn't he mentioned her? I thought about how she avoided my eyes, how quickly she left. Coffee and cinnamon? Just those 2 items. Nothing else. Coffee and cinnamon. The combination unsettled me, though I couldn't explain why. I brought the sign inside, locked the door, and stood alone in the quiet store. The lights hummed. Cars passed outside. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt right. Ivy's voice echoed again. Watch him. I had watched, and now I had seen something. But I didn't understand it yet. Brad had never mentioned a woman. After Willa died, he'd said he dated a little nothing serious. He never introduced anyone to Ivy or me. So who was this woman? And why now? I pulled out my phone and stared at it. Roger Stevens had been my friend for 40 years. We met when his kids went to school with Willa. He'd been a detective for 30 years before retiring. He knew how to read situations, how to find answers when things didn't add up. I hadn't wanted to bother him. Hadn't wanted to admit I might be chasing shadows because of something a child said. But now there was a woman. A woman I couldn't place. A woman meeting Brad outside my store. A woman who bought coffee and cinnamon and left like she didn't want to be remembered. I opened Roger's contact and typed a message. Need to talk. Can you come by the store? His reply came quickly. Be there in 20. I set the phone down and looked around the store. The shelves I'd stocked for decades. The register that had served generations. The coffee aisle where the woman had stood minutes earlier. Everything looked the same. But deep in my gut, where instinct lives, I knew something was very wrong. Who was she? And why was she with Brad? When you need to find the truth, you call someone who knows how to look for lies. Roger Stevens had been my friend for 40 years, and in that time I'd learned that he had a particular way of listening. Not the polite nodding most people do while waiting for their turn to talk, but real listening, the kind where he'd tilt his head slightly, eyes focused, picking apart every word like he was solving a puzzle. He walked into Harper Family Market 23 minutes after I'd sent the text. Gray hair, cut military short jeans, and a flannel shirt, reading glasses hanging from a cord around his neck. 67 years old, and still moved like a man who'd spent 3 decades chasing criminals through back alleys. "You look like hell," he said by way of greeting. "Thanks, Roger." He glanced around the empty store. "You closed. Should've flipped the sign. Figured we needed privacy. So it must be serious." He pulled up a stool behind the counter and settled in. "What's going on?" I didn't know where to start, so I started with Ivy. Told him about the ice cream at the park. The whisper, the fear in her eyes when she'd said, "Watch him." Roger didn't interrupt, just pulled a small notebook from his pocket. He always carried one even in retirement, and jotted down notes. Then I told him about this morning. The woman with the dark hair and leather jacket. Coffee and cinnamon. The way she'd avoided my eyes. How I'd seen her 20 minutes later getting into a car with Brad. "You get a plate number?" Roger asked. No, I was too surprised. "Description of the vehicle. Silver sedan, maybe a Honda or Toyota." I wasn't paying attention to the car. He made another note. "What about the woman, height, weight, distinguishing features?" I thought back, trying to remember details. 5'6", maybe 5'7". Thin, dark hair and a ponytail. Mid-30s. Expensive-looking leather jacket, brown with zippers. "You said she reminded you of someone." "Yeah, but I can't place it. Just a feeling." Roger tapped his pen against the notebook. "And Brad's never mentioned a woman. Never. But you've been giving him $40,000 a year for 7 years." "For Ivy," I said quickly. "The money's for Ivy." "Right." Roger's tone was neutral, but I knew what he was thinking. "Stephen, when's the last time Brad gave you an update on how that money's being used?" I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't. Not a real answer anyway. Brad had never sent receipts, never explained expenses, just accepted the check every January with a quick thanks and moved on. "He's raising a daughter alone." I said, defensive now. "I'm sure it's going to good use." "I'm sure." Roger set his pen down and looked at me. "But Ivy told you to stop sending money and to watch Brad. That's not normal, Stephen. 7-year-olds don't say things like that unless something's wrong." "I know. So what do you want me to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? I'd called Roger because some part of me knew I needed help. But saying it out loud felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. "I need to know what's going on," I said finally. "I need to know if Ivy's safe. If Brad's, I don't know, doing something he shouldn't be." Roger leaned back on the stool, arms crossed. "You want surveillance? Is that legal? On a public street, watching someone's comings and goings from outside their property?" He shrugged. "Not illegal. Not particularly ethical if you're doing it to a family member, but not illegal." The word family hit harder than it should have. Brad wasn't blood, but he was Willa's husband, Ivy's father. For 7 years, I'd sent him money because that's what family did. Now I was talking about spying on him like he was a suspect. "I don't want to betray his trust," I said quietly. Then don't." Roger's voice was firm. "Go home. Forget about the woman. Forget about Ivy's warning. Tell yourself everything's fine and keep writing those checks." I looked up sharply. "You think I should ignore this?" "No." He met my eyes. "I think you need to decide what matters more, Brad's trust or Ivy's safety." The words hung in the air between us. "She's 7 years old," Roger continued. "She came to you scared enough to whisper a warning in a park. She told you to stop sending money and to watch her father. Kids that age don't make things up, Stephen. They don't have the imagination for it. If Ivy's worried, there's a reason." I thought about Ivy's face at the park. The way she'd gripped my sleeve. The fear in her eyes. "What do we do?" I asked. Roger picked up his pen again. "We start simple. I've still got some equipment from my detective days, cameras, recording devices, all legal for private investigation purposes. We set up outside Brad's house. Watch who comes and goes. See if the mystery woman shows up again. Track his routine. Look for patterns. For how long? As long as it takes." He flipped to a fresh page in his notebook. "Could be a few days. Could be a couple weeks. Depends on what we find. And if we find nothing, then you'll know Ivy was confused, and you can sleep better at night." Roger looked at me over his reading glasses. "But I've been doing this a long time, Stephen. And my gut says we're going to find something. Mine did too. That was the problem." "When do we start?" I asked. Tomorrow morning. I'll bring the equipment." We'll park down the street.